Welcome to Allies Armies. I'm Jess.
And I am Sean, and today we are looking at 5 small box games that are all new for 2023.
And small boxes have the bonus of being in a small box, meaning they don't take up a lot of space. And we are running out of space. So it is a bonus if you can get a lot of game into an even smaller package.
Yeah, absolutely. It's London, tiny flats. There is no room at all, but there's also no room right now for chit-chat, so let's get right to it.
The first game we want to talk about is Elawa, which is published by Bombyx. And they've been doing a really great job of doing interesting card games that involve a little bit of engine building or set collection. We really like Sea, Salt, and Paper from last year. And so in Elawa, you are taken back to prehistoric times and you are sitting around a fire. So all the cards are in a circle. And then you pick up a card and you get a certain amount of resources going on from that. And it's like bone and fur, berries, typical like cave people type of resources. And then you use those resources to play your cards, but your cards interact in various ways. Some are just like really high point scoring cards. Other ones let you like cash extra resources on them for big points. So you're always trying to maximize the interaction with the cards and how they score.
Yeah, I really like Sea, Salt, and Paper. I really like the look of Nar. We were shown Nar, which is Bombyx's next one, but unfortunately we didn't get a chance to play that, but it looks like it's in the same vein. But Elawa does do such a cool job of that same sort of feel a little bit that we got in Sea, Salt, and Paper, except now instead of building that little bit and then gambling and then rebuilding, here you're building for the whole game. And they all interact in these interesting different ways where you're storing, or it's like I want a lot of red cards, but then maybe the red cards that are out, like you can't afford them or they're not in a good place to get resources. It's cool that there are so many different like levers to which card you're drawing each time that you're drawing it. How does it work in my sets? How many resources is it going to get? Can I pay for it with the resources that I've got? All of that stuff.
Yeah, and because one of the key things is each card will have like a value of 1 to 3 for how many resources you get. So it'll be often that you take a card just for the resources and you don't even want to use the card at all. And if you can empty out a resource pile, you get a bonus too. So that might factor into what you're getting as well. And every time we've played, I felt like we've tried different things because we've tried to like really get a lot of storage stuff, which is helpful because sometimes you can't keep all of the resources that you end up getting. Other times it's been a mix of things. We haven't found a winning strategy yet.
No, well, yeah, I think we've won pretty much 50% of the time each, and yeah, and you're right, every single time it's been different. I noticed one game you totally crushed me with just the high point scoring cards that are also high cost, and so the next game I tried that, and then I got whooped by you just got like a million reds and then a bunch of red scoring cards, and so it's hard to just copy the one path, and so you really have to be like dynamic for what cards are out. And how you're drafting them, and then also that you really always want to be the one taking the last one off the piles because that extra resource is worth a lot in this game.
And there are 2 different like sides to the leaders you can play. So the first version, which you probably only play on your first time, which is no power. But then there are 4 different leaders.
Yeah, and they're all asymmetric, different powers, and they seem fairly even.
Yeah, and it's just small little changes, but you definitely try to play into your leader's power.
Yeah, so this is one that we like a lot. This has been a hit with us. We've played this a bunch of times since we picked it up. We got it just before Essen. Actually, our friends got it for us from France because it's not out here yet. And then we were thrilled because there was an English rulebook in it. We thought we're gonna have to stumble through the French. We didn't have to, but yeah, it's really good. I like this one a lot.
Another one that we got recently was a Kickstarter that got delivered, and that is Moon. And so Moon is by Sinister Fish, and the same artist and designer for the trilogy that they did that starts with Villagers and then Streets and then Moon.
Håkon Hole Gardner. And we actually played with him. He taught us the game at UKGE, and he was a delight.
Yeah, he was really, really lovely. And I really like the space theme. I think the art in particular for Moon is really good. I really love the different space stations, and it every card's a little bit different, but still the same style that it translates across all of them really well.
It's really quirky. They got really cool little buildings in it.
And in Moon, you are building out your space station, and it's a card drafting game. And so we played it at UK Games Expo with 4 players, and then we've also played it a ton with 2 players since we've gotten it. An interesting thing with the card drafting is each set of cards comes with a different power ability. So when you pass on your cards, you're also passing on that ability. So that plays in interestingly as well in terms of what card you might want to play, but also what ability you'll have temporarily just for that turn only. And like a lot of drafting games, I think it does play quite differently across the player counts.
Yeah, it does. We've mostly played this at 2, but the card ability thing is really cool because you know what it's going to be. Because there's only 2, or if 3, there's only 3, and you're always going to get that one every 3 times because it's always going to come with that hand of cards. So you know, oh, I'm going to get one that's going to give me a free resource. So I know that I'm going to be able to play that, or I'm going to get one that lets me cash out a resource to get some hearts so I can have extra resources. That'll be good. So there is a little bit more planning ahead here because you know one card that's coming back to you every time. And there's also just how the engine builds too. So you've got one set of cards that gives you resources. You've got one set of cards that gives you these tags that get you points at the end of the round. And then you've got cards that give you game end points and cards that give you once a round powers. And all of that stuff interacts for only 4 different things. I feel like there's a lot of variation within those 4 things.
Yeah, definitely, because there is also the shared goals you're competing for as well that is going to be based on the types of cards that you're collecting too, and so that will mix it up as well. And a lot of the cards will require a specific tag to get played, and if you can't play one of those or a resource, you get these little rovers, and you place those on the other people's cards to be able to use their tag or their resource, meaning it can get you out of a situation if you're oh, I'm 1 short, but I really want this card.
Conceptually, you place them. Jess never places them because the other thing they do is if you have more than the other person, you win tiebreakers for the between round tag goals, and she will not give up a tiebreaker. The one thing that does bother me a bit though is for the components, all of the tokens are double-sided. So they have 1 on one side and 3 on the other side. This is fine for the resources, but with the hearts, it's really easy to accidentally flip those and to lose track of exactly what you've got. But how do you feel about Moon versus, because now we got the trilogy, and it feels like a trilogy to me, especially because I like that it moves forward in time too, that you go Village, Streets, Moon. How do you feel Moon fits with Streets and Village?
Well, I really like Villagers.
Yeah, sorry,
I really like Villagers. I think that's my favorite one. And Moon is new, so I am worried that it's new and shiny.
Right.
But I right now I think it's second for me. I do like the drafting and I like the engine building, but at 2 players, I don't know if that's the best player count because for those tags that you're competing against, it's just 2 of you competing against it. I think it would be more interesting at 3 or even at 4, but because we primarily play at 2, I think I prefer Villagers at 2.
Fair enough. I will say, though, that for a card drafting game, there are so few that can work at 2. This works totally fine at 2. If you're only going to play this at 2, I wouldn't shy away from it because as far as card drafting games go, at least, I think it does okay. And this also had an at-release available expansion, which is called Valkyrie. And Valkyrie comes with these little spaceships, and it gives you a way to get... it's these bonuses that you can get through the spaceships, and then there's also some different cards, different goals. And that adds a little bit to it as well. It's not a huge amount. It feels a bit like some of the Tiny Epic kind of mini expansions when they first come out that don't they don't add a whole ton to the game, but they just just a little different way to play, and I imagine we'll use it basically every time we play.
Yeah, I think so. And like the other expansions from the trilogy, it does fit in the base box. And these base boxes are great. At first, we weren't too sure because it seems like such an odd shape. We're like, well, where will we fit it?
Yeah,
and then it fits like perfectly in just the right slot.
I love these boxes. Yeah,
Yeah.
I could go for more of these boxes. These are absolutely terrific. So the next ones that we are going to talk about, there's actually two, and we may as well talk about these two kind of together. They're both from Play for Keeps, and they are both re-implementations of older games that I believe were previously only available in Japan. And Play for Keeps is a UK company, and they did supply us with these review copies. But they are My Favorite Things and String Railway. And let's start with My Favorite Things.
Yeah, so My Favorite Things is a trick-taking game where it is specifically about your favorite things. So it's this interesting mechanic of when you start off, you have to give someone a prompt of like list your favorite Pokemon, for example, whatever you might want it to be. And then you pass them your cards and they have to put from 1 to 5 their list and one that they don't like. And
Which is Jinx.
And everybody...
Jinx creeps me out.
Everybody is doing this at the same time. So people are getting different prompts and making different lists. And that's all simultaneous. So hopefully you're not waiting too long for people to write their lists. Although some people might struggle with thinking.
It is so important to me that I get my list just right. And it depends on the prompt too, because I'll get like your favorite fruit, and I'm like, oh, okay, that's fine. It's not, but I will get like someone will be like your favorite Stanley Kubrick movies, and I'm like, this is like I'm bearing my soul to you. I have to get this exactly right. And it's like, can we just take 10 hours so I can rewatch these movies? I think it's really going to vary person to person, though.
I think definitely, and I think people will really gear towards liking a specific type of prompt versus another, but that's only part one, because then you get their cards back and you don't know what their ranking is. It gets covered up. So all you have is you know what the prompt was, you know that they filled it in, but you don't know what value they gave. So then it's a trick-taking game. So you are trying to win the tricks based on how well you can estimate what the person's answer was, as well as what maybe you think they might be playing for you too, like, because you're trying to, like, it's almost a meta game of what everybody else is playing based on what number value you think that might give it as well.
Yeah. So I'm like, does Jess know I like Poliwhirl, or does she think I only kind of like Poliwhirl? Or so it really is. I think she thinks I like Poliwhirl 3. But I like Poliwhirl 2, but I think she likes limes more than kiwis, so I'm going to play limes. And it is interesting that way, that it's really like all in your brain, because the actual game itself is super simple. It's just the simplest trick-taking game, where it's if I play a 1 and you play a 2, I win, because 1's higher than 2. But the fun is really that it's fun to write lists. I love writing lists, but then also that what do they think I would think, and what do I think they think, and then you thought that, like, why did you do that? That doesn't make any sense. Why would you choose things in that order? Why do you think Dugtrio is an interesting Pokemon? Why would you choose them over Chespin? That doesn't make any sense.
This does feel like it's more of a social game that you'd play with a group of friends, maybe around some drinks, as opposed to a let's take this very seriously competitive trick-taking game. And it really is leading into those conversations and debates about the lists you make.
Yeah, this is 100%. This is more of a conversation starter than it is anything else. And I think it's really one of these, you'll look at this game and think, yeah, my group would love that. We would love making lists and laughing about our lists. Or, no, my group likes serious board games and we would not like that. You will know that judgment right away from just what we showed you. The other one from Play for Keeps is String Railway, and again, this is a remake of an older game, and I believe, again, a game that you could only get the Japanese. This one actually may have had an English edition. But String Railway is this game where you're building the railway out of strings, and it is actual strings. You've got a pile of strings, you got 4 shortish ones, 1 longer one, and you are putting them out. And there are 2 different ways to play. So there's one way that you can play where you're adding a location each time, and then you're connecting strings anywhere that you want to connect strings. You're kind of getting in each other's way. And it's a fairly simple, you're just putting it out and then you're getting some points each turn. And then there's another way to play, which is String Railway Cubed, where you've got cubes on the map, and this is more of a railway game. And this, I think, was our preference of the two ways to play as well, where you're putting out those strings and you are collecting up these cubes, which represent different sorts of, I don't know, stuff that you got to move with your train, and you're trying to move that to the correct places, the correct warehouses that are out on the board, and then you're getting points from how you move that. You're also upgrading your train. There's a little bit more to that.
Yeah, it's interesting though, because it starts off with this border that's also just done by string.
Yes.
And so you just have this black border. You've got a mountain in both of them. You also have like this river in the first
Those are all
version.
strings. Everything is strings.
They're all string. And it seems like such a big area. So I remember the first turn that I played and I had to put my string out. I thought, well, this isn't a problem because you don't want to overlap with people. That's a negative. And I thought, this is a giant area. These strings seem so short. I'm sure we won't get in our way. But then sure enough, like as your string is coming out and you're building the various areas, you're definitely like overlapping. You're filling up the various stations or you're emptying out the cubes depending on which version you're playing. And it ended up being a lot trickier than I thought. I know there was some like you had to bring in the judge basically for like, oh, if I stretch my string just like this, does it touch just right?
It's not like we have to bring in a judge. It's like Jess thinks if she stretches it perfectly taut, that counts.
You also do.
You let go, and then does it still touch them, or does it not touch them anymore when it is at rest? I think we can all agree those are official professional string rules.
There were some questionable moves by you as well, where it was like just one quarter to just another quarter.
We'll have to look at the photos. But this, obviously we did have fun with this. I will say that this works better, though, at more players. Because at 2 players, even though we are getting each other's way, it's not as much as you would like. I think this would be more fun because it's the same size area with 4 players when everyone's getting each other's way. And the first method, the one that doesn't have the cubes, you have to play 2 each, which is never my favorite way to play. But I think the people who will like this it's very, like, it has such a, like, DIY, like, indie feel to it. And I think there's something to that. It's like, it's just a little out of the mainstream, and I think there's a little, like, charm in that.
Yeah, it is a light game, I would say.
This is a very light game.
So don't expect a lot of complexity or a lot of, like, strategy. You know, you only have 5 strings you're placing and you are just, like, connecting up stations or moving things around. And like you said, it is just charming in how it looks. I think if this was used at, like, a board game club or something, that people would be interested in coming around to check it out.
Yeah, I think this is going to be one that appeals to new gamers or to people who have, it's going to be kind of 2 extremes, either new gamers or people who have a whole lot of games but are kind of searching for that, like, weird thing, like that thing that's just kind of on the outskirts a little bit. But it's quirky, it's fun, but it's very, very quick. This is definitely a filler game, just kind of a quick filler start of the evening kind of game.
The last game we want to talk about is The Plot Thickens, and this was provided to us for review by Bright Eye Games. And it is a storytelling game. There are a few different versions you can get. The Detectives is the newest one, but there's also romance as well as science fiction. And they come in these great boxes that look like books and open up so nicely. And it is a group, really just storytelling. It plays for 3 to 4 players. And so someone starts it off by telling their story. They have a character they have to introduce. And then you have a hand of cards of people, place, and thing. And then anytime you say any of those words, you get to play down your cards. But what you're also trying to do is then, once everybody has some of their cards played out, is incorporate the things that they've talked about on their cards and use those words for continuing the story on.
Yeah, and the story's really short. I think all of the examples in the book are like 4 or 5 sentences, and I think that's probably how it works best, so you're kind of passing it along. So you say a few sentences, and then you say, meanwhile, and then the next person picks it up. And I think what tends to happen is it kind of becomes this, like, you're coming at the same story from the different angles. It's like Pulp Fiction. They're all equal quality to Pulp Fiction. It's like that sort of idea, though. So you're all coming at it from different angles into the same story, and then everything's going to intertwine because you first do that one of putting down your own. And when you put down your own, you also get these little rocket ship things if you're doing space, or magnifying glass if you're doing detective. And so you collect those when you play out cards, and you put them down when you play them on other people's cards. And that's kind of the competitive part of the game. Is it's like how many of these do I want to build up so I can play them out. And also that means now all these words are available for everyone else to use, which is fun for the story, but bad if you're playing this competitively. But this is not a competitive game.
Yeah, because if somebody's telling a story and it's not making sense, you can call them on it and say writer's block. And then they're supposed to spend a token to restart, or their turn ends. But it says in the rules you can be as competitive as you want with this.
Right. And when you play with Jess, what happens is you say writer's block, and then she immediately goes, no, and then just continues on like it never even happened, which is funny.
Well, I felt like my story did make sense, so I didn't agree with the judge. It says majority rules in the rules, so you can decide how strict you want to be. But this is one I think that would be very specific to certain groups. Mm-hmm. It would be people who feel very comfortable being silly, using their imaginations. I think you can get a lot of laughs out of the story that you're telling. But if you have people that are really reserved and don't feel comfortable being put on the spot, I don't think it would be a game for them. And depending on what genre you like, that would influence the type of box you get. So, if you really like film noirs, then detectives would be right up your alley.
That's the one to get. Get detective.
Maybe you want to go like the risque version and do romance. I mean, they don't have like super risky stuff in there.
No, they don't.
But it's for all of the people, places, and things. It would be tropes or tie-ins to those genres, depending on what it is.
And that is it. That is 5 small box games. And if you are looking for just a solid 2-player game, or really just a solid board game, I would recommend both Elawa and Moon.
But if you're looking for more of a social activity, social game with the right group and that promotes conversation, then My Favorite Things or the Plot Thickens might be a good fit.
And then String Railway is kind of the oddball, kind of the quirky oddball in the bunch. And if it's for you, I think you're going to recognize that pretty much right away. But I should have also said that My Favorite Things and String Railway are both coming to Kickstarter. I think in late October. I'm not positive. So if you're interested in those, look that up.
But as usual, thank you so much for watching. Please let us know in the comments if you've played any of these games or any great new small box games that you've picked up. And as usual, please like, subscribe, and hopefully we'll see you next time for another game.